Her son told her she was just extra weight in the basement. Jeanette Grant folded her laundry, then filed an eviction notice. The deed still had her name. The mortgage, co-signed. By the time he noticed, the attic was locked, the garage rekeyed, and rent was due, per room. She raised him, paid for him, protected him. Now she was his landlord. And this time, late fees absolutely applied. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. The stairs creaked like they were apologizing. Jeanette took them slowly, one gloved hand gripping the chipped banister, the other holding a canvas tote with her folded sweaters inside. A draft snuck up from below, cold and stubborn, like it lived there year-round. Darren had called it a temporary stay. "Just until we sort things out, Mom," he'd said, already glancing at his phone while Rachel moved dishes around like she couldn't hear. The basement door shut behind her with a tired thump. No lock, no insulation, just the sound of her own breath catching as her eyes adjusted. The space was barely finished. Cement floor, a twin mattress on a low frame, a folding chair, and a laundry sink that dripped every 20 seconds. The bulb overhead flickered when she pulled the chain. No windows, no closet, no heat vent, just a baseboard unit in the far corner that hummed weakly, like it knew it was fighting a losing battle. Jeanette set her tote down beside the mattress. The floor felt damp underfoot. Upstairs, the dinnerware clinked. Laughter. Rachel's voice floated through the vent above the laundry unit. "Honestly, I thought she'd push back, but she just nodded. Can you believe it?" Darren's voice followed, lower, sharp. "She's just a useless expense now. Keeping her here cuts that guilt in half." The sentence landed like a dropped dish. Jeanette didn't move, didn't blink, just stood in the middle of her son's basement, surrounded by boxes that didn't belong to her and air that smelled like mildew and detergent. She had buried a husband 6 weeks ago, paid for her own funeral attire, carried his ashes home in a velvet box that now sat silently on the folding chair. Upstairs, silverware scraped plates. The hum of conversation continued. They hadn't even closed the vent. She pressed her palm to her chest. Steady heartbeat. She was still here, still standing. Jeanette climbed halfway back up the stairs before pausing. The hallway light bled through the door crack like a temptation. She could knock, ask for clarity, demand respect. Instead, she turned around, descended again. At the foot of the stairs, a tray had been left, a mismatched plate of food, cold chicken breast, some wilted greens, and a cup of tap water with no ice. No note, no fork. She carried it back to her mattress and sat, chewed in silence. Not tears, not rage, just observation. The vent above whistled faintly with the change in temperature as the upstairs heater kicked in. She finished eating, rinsed the plate in the laundry sink, and dried it with the same towel she used to cushion her Bible inside the tote. Then, using a pen from her purse and the back of a church bulletin, she began to write a list. She titled it, "Things I Remember That You've Forgotten," paid your college tuition, all 4 years, co-signed the first mortgage, watched your daughter every summer for 6 years, covered your credit card bill the month you bought Rachel's engagement ring. This house? Still half in my name. She paused, added one more line, "You just made your last mistake." Upstairs, a toilet flushed. Rachel laughed again. Something about privacy being a myth with old people. Jeanette folded the paper and slipped it into her tote. She reached over and pulled the thin blanket up to her chest. The mattress squeaked beneath her. The basement was silent now, save for the occasional drip and the low, sad growl of pipes settling. She closed her eyes, and in that dark, unfinished room, Jeanette smiled for the first time in days. It was not a warm smile. It was the kind that planned. The thud came without warning. Jeanette looked up from the corner where she was folding socks. A cardboard box skidded halfway across the concrete floor before tipping on its side, contents spilling. Photo albums, a velvet jewelry box, a pair of reading glasses still smudged with use. "Thought you might want the rest of your stuff," Darren called from the top of the stairs. His voice echoed down like a UPS driver's, not cruel, just indifferent. He didn't wait for a reply. The basement door clicked shut again. Jeanette sat still for a moment, then stood and walked slowly to the box, each step punctuated by the gritty crunch of whatever dust or spider carcasses Darren had stirred up with his throw. She crouched, lifted the velvet box first. Inside, her mother's ring, her husband's cufflinks, a gold bracelet she hadn't worn since Rachel rolled her eyes at it at Christ. Mazin asked if it was from before color TV. She set it aside and began gently repacking the rest, photo by photo, glass by glass. Above, footsteps moved through the kitchen. Then Rachel's voice, clear and sharp. "We gave her a roof." "That's enough." Jeanette didn't flinch this time. She was learning not to. She slid the last album back into the box and taped the edges closed. Not with anger, with precision. Then she reached under the mattress and pulled out a slim envelope marked Bank, Personal. It had lived there since the funeral, sealed, stapled, silent. She opened it. The insurance payout wasn't much, but it was untouched. Her husband's final act of quiet love, enough to bury him and just enough to build something if she wanted to. Darren didn't know it existed. She kept it that way. Flashback. She remembered the bursar's office, how her hands had trembled as she wrote the check. Darren had wanted out of state. "They have a better finance department," he'd said. She had worked 2 shifts at the library for months to make up the gap. Not once had he asked how she managed it. Another flash. A signing table. Darren's first home loan. Him smiling, signing papers while she sat beside him, her signature binding the future together. "I'll refinance you out in a year, Mom," he'd said. He never did. Now Jeanette moved to the small fold-out table she'd set up beside the laundry sink, opened a drawer, pulled out an old planner from her church days. It still smelled faintly of sandalwood and paper. She opened to the notes section and began jotting numbers. Insurance total, $47,300. House deed, still half hers. Darren's last tax notice, left open on the upstairs printer last week. Property taxes unpaid, 3/4 in arrears. Rachel's voice filtered through again, closer this time, near the top of the basement door. "I don't know why she's still down there like some Victorian ghost," Rachel muttered. "She could be useful. Maybe babysit more, or help with laundry instead of hoarding old perfume bottles." A pause. Then Darren's muffled reply. "She doesn't even ask for anything. That's the problem. It's like having guilt on a mattress." Jeanette closed the planner, folded the envelope of money back into the center and tucked it beneath the mattress again. She walked over to the scattered tote bags in the corner and began organizing them, placing the repacked box on top, then draping a folded afghan across it like furniture being prepared for a move. Not now, but soon. She glanced at the vent again, then picked up her phone, unlocked it, and found a contact labeled simply, "Lorna, retired, realtor." She stared at it, then tapped schedule call. As the calendar synced, Jeanette whispered aloud, "I paid for your wings, Darren. I'm keeping the nest." Jeanette woke before the pipes did. It was still dark, maybe 5:30. The basement ceiling groaned as the upstairs heat kicked in, but down here it only stirred the cold. She didn't bother with slippers, just her sweater, the one her husband used to call that sensible blue. She pulled out the folding chair and sat at the card table. A fresh notepad lay waiting. She'd bought it weeks ago at the drugstore up the street, lined paper, no frills. Not for poetry, for proof. She clicked a ballpoint pen. At the top of the page, she wrote in clean block letters, "Things he owes me and forgot. College tuition, $92,400 over 4 years. First car, 2004 Civic, paid in full, $6,000. Co-signed mortgage, this house, initial down payment, $18,000 from our savings. Monthly support, first 2 years, $450 per month times 24 equals $10,800 emergency loan after Rachel lost her job, $4,500 babysitting for Clara, 6 summers, 10 weeks times 5 days per week times 6 hours per day equals 1,800 hours, no pay." She paused, then drew a box around the last item and underlined it twice. No one had even said thank you for that. She continued, House deed, still in my name, 50%, per original paperwork. Deed number 0451-B, county record. No release of interest ever filed. Darren's second year of grad school, paid just one semester. That was $17,200. Her fingers ached. She rolled them gently, then turned the page and began again. A second list. What he thinks I forgot. That he used my credit to get a better mortgage rate. That the bank sent me the foreclosure notice in 2017. That I paid it. That he asked me not to tell Rachel. That this home was always meant to be our retirement safety net. She flipped the page once more. At the top, she wrote in smaller letters, options. She hesitated, then added, talk to Lorna. Quiet deed transfer possible? Leverage unpaid taxes, move out quietly, or don't move at all. Her hand hovered over the pen before she pressed hard, circling the final line. Don't move at all. The pipes above creaked again, this time the bathroom. Someone had flushed. Jeanette looked up, then closed the notebook with both hands, like sealing a vault. Later that afternoon, after the house settled into weekday quiet, she put on a coat and walked 3 blocks to the library. She didn't go inside. She just sat on the bench beside the butterfly bush, now bare, and opened her phone. Contacts, Lorna, retired, realtor. She tapped call. 2 rings. Then, well, look who finally dialed. Jeanette smiled faintly. Do you still have access to the MLS? I do, and I've still got a nose for nonsense. What's going on, Net? Jeanette glanced back toward the house, still faint in the distance. I think I need to see something official. Quietly. Lorna didn't ask what, just said, my place. Saturday noon. I'll bring coffee. You bring whatever you're not ready to say out loud yet. Deal, Jeanette replied. And Jeanette? Yes? You always paid attention to the small print. I remember that. Jeanette hung up and slipped the phone into her coat. On the way home, she stopped at the corner bakery and bought a single almond biscotti. Not for Darren, not for Rachel, just for her. Back in the basement, she wrote one final line on her list. Next time they call me useless, I want the paperwork to answer. Upstairs, the mail slot clanked, and a familiar envelope dropped to the floor. It was addressed to Jeanette M. Grant, co-owner. Jeanette walked up the stairs, slowly, deliberately, and picked it up like a key. Lorna's dining table was set like an old poker game, papers shuffled, calculator cocked sideways, glasses perched low on her nose. The Saturday sun angled through her blinds, cutting the room into slices of light and shadow. Jeanette sat across from her, palms flat on a manila folder. Inside, bank statements, the co-signed mortgage agreement, and a copy of the deed Darren forgot she ever held. Lorna tapped the screen of her tablet. I ran the parcel through county records and the MLS archive. She turned it toward Jeanette. Still legally listed as co-owned. Deed hasn't been amended or refiled. That means I could force a sale? Jeanette asked, voice calm but steady. Lorna smiled faintly. You could force a lot more than that. Jeanette looked at the scanned image. Her name, in block print. Still there. Still valid. She leaned back. And what's the house worth now? Lorna adjusted her glasses. Conservatively? Mid-400s, but Darren hasn't paid property tax in over 10 months. The lien notice will hit public record by summer. Jeanette absorbed that in silence. 10 months. All while Rachel bought organic skincare online and Darren upgraded his car stereo. Lorna continued, if you want my advice, offer to buy him out. Quietly, use his fear of losing the house before he realizes who's behind the offer. Jeanette folded her hands. He'll never see it coming. That's the point, Lorna said, and you have leverage. Jeanette opened her folder. Inside, clipped behind her life insurance statement, was a sticky note with a phone number. A woman named Lynn, specialist in financial restructuring and reverse mortgage options. Her late husband had scribbled it during one of their last visits to the bank in case you ever need the house to work harder than we did. Jeanette slid the sticky note across the table. What's your read on this? Lorna raised an eyebrow. Reverse mortgage? Not usually my first pick, but In your case, it's not a lifeline. It's a chess move. You use it for liquidity, then buy out Darren's half. Retitle the property to yourself. Game over. Jeanette stared at the small square of yellow paper. Liquidity, ownership, leverage. Everything her son assumed she didn't have. Tell me what I need to gather, she said. Lorna grabbed a notepad. All right, you'll need proof of equity, a current mortgage payoff statement, and… Her voice faded into a hum of logistics while Jeanette stared out the window. A flashback bubbled up. Darren at 14, furious over curfew, slamming the back door so hard the glass cracked. Her husband had wanted to ground him. Jeanette convinced him not to. He's testing limits, she'd said. Let him win one. He'll come around. He never had. Lorna's pen tapped the table. You with me? Jeanette nodded. Just thinking how long I've been writing blank checks to his character. Well, Lorna said, it's time to send an invoice. Jeanette smiled. Back at the house, she entered through the basement door. The smell of laundry detergent and damp walls had become background noise. She placed the folder in a locked drawer near her cot, then opened her planner and began writing again. Next steps. Contact Lynn Rhee. Reverse mortgage request payoff estimate from Darren's lender draft. Anonymous buyout offer, Lorna to submit. Inventory valuables. Rachel's been reorganizing upstairs again. She drew a firm line under the last item, then crossed the room to retrieve a shoebox from the shelf. Inside, a stack of warranty documents, old appraisals, and the original settlement paperwork for Darren's first loan. She added one more line to her to-do list. Remind them whose name built this house. Upstairs, Darren's voice echoed faintly, arguing with someone on speakerphone. The words were muffled, but one phrase cut through. No, I can't sell yet. I'm not even the only name on the deed. Jeanette closed her eyes. The wheel had turned, and she wasn't under it this time. She was driving it. Darren's phone buzzed just as he was microwaving leftover Thai food. The screen lit up with a subject line that drained the color from his face. Formal purchase interest, 108 Grove Park Lane. He read the message twice, then a third time. Rachel leaned on the counter, scrolling. Everything okay? He didn't answer. The email had come from a brokerage firm in town, Foster and Chase, Lorna's firm. But the sender wasn't her. It was a junior associate, polite, firm, impersonal. A motivated third-party investor was offering full market value for the home. Cash, no contingencies, closing within 30 days. Darren's fingers curled around the edge of the counter. Someone's trying to buy the house. Rachel frowned. Wait, what? What does that mean, like a flipper? He didn't answer. He was already pulling up the mortgage portal, keying in their login. The property tax tab blinked red at the top. Overdue, just like Lorna had warned years ago. He tried to swallow the knot in his throat. Rachel tilted her head. Why now? Who'd want this place? I don't know, Darren muttered. He did. Or he thought he did. The timing was too perfect. His half of the property was vulnerable. He still hadn't completed the transfer from his mom, mostly because the lawyer had been expensive and she'd never pressed. And now, someone was circling, smelling the equity. You told me this house was solid, Rachel said. You said your mom's name on the deed didn't mean anything. Darren ran a hand through his hair. It didn't. It doesn't. She wouldn't do this. Rachel gave him a long look. Wouldn't she? Earlier that morning, Jeanette sat in Lorna's office, spine straight, hands folded in her lap. The walls smelled faintly of coffee and copy toner. A digital document glowed on the screen between them. Here's how it works, Lorna said. We submit the offer through my associate. It's technically anonymous. Buyer ID is redacted until the contract phase. If Darren accepts, we close it through a trust name you control. Jeanette nodded once. Let's offer $237,000 for his half. Lorna blinked. You're overpaying. I'm buying peace, Jeanette said. Not a bargain. Lorna's pen hovered. You're sure? Jeanette's eyes didn't waver. He doesn't get to see me coming. Not this time. Back at the house, Darren paced. Rachel sat at the kitchen island, biting a cuticle. What if we lose it? Where would we even go? Darren snapped. "We're not selling. I just need to stall. Figure out who this is. Maybe counter." She crossed her arms. "With what money, Darren?" He didn't answer. Jeanette could hear everything through the vent. She sat quietly downstairs, a crossword open in her lap, pen frozen mid-air. Above her, the voices rose and fell. The fear was creeping in. She didn't smile, not yet, but a piece of her unknotted, slowly, methodically. The house had always echoed like this in times of pressure. The walls knew their history, knew the shape of consequence. Later that night, Darren stood in the hallway with the formal offer in hand, rereading the line, "Purchase contingent upon current co-owner's consent or quitclaim." Rachel leaned over his shoulder. "What does that mean?" "It means we can't do anything without her." They both looked toward the basement door. Downstairs, Jeanette sipped her tea, turned a page in her planner, and added one new line under "Completed steps." "Offer delivered. Let them sweat." She set her pen down. The house was quiet again. Then, footsteps. Coming down. Darren. He appeared at the base of the stairs, arms crossed. "I got an offer on the house," he said. Jeanette didn't look up. He tried again. "It's from some investor. Might have to sell. I just thought you should know." She looked up slowly. "Thank you," she said, voice smooth as porcelain. "You always were good at telling me things last." And then she stood, walked right past him, left him standing in the stairwell with silence curling around his ankles like smoke. Some inheritances aren't written in wills. They're documented in debt. The old printer wheezed like it was being asked to remember too much. Jeanette stood by it, waiting patiently as page after page fed out, tuition receipts, bank transfers, mortgage co-sign forms, the signed notarization of Darren's first down payment check. She hadn't changed the file names. She wanted them labeled exactly as they lived in her memory. Darren Tuition Weir 2 Final.PDF Grant Mortgage Cosign 2007.jpg Bank Transfer 4,500 Rachel Layoff.pdf. She stacked the pages into neat piles on her cot, smoothing the corners. The hum of the dryer upstairs rumbled through the pipes. One stack, labeled Direct Financial Assistance, had grown so thick she had to paperclip it twice. She tucked it into a binder, marked the spine with a single word in black Sharpie, receipts. Flashback. She remembered the day she signed that first loan. Darren was 24, all charm and upward ambition. The loan officer had smiled too easily, glancing at Jeanette only to confirm her ID and run her credit. Darren tapped his foot the whole time, impatient, not anxious. She'd leaned toward him once it was over. "You'll refinance me out, right?" "Of course, Mom." He'd grinned. 12 months tops. That was 16 years ago. He never did. Now, Jeanette zipped the binder into a messenger bag along with her ID, planner, and the certified copy of the deed. She pulled on a soft gray wool coat, one her husband used to say made her look like someone who gave good advice, and stepped out the side basement door into the cold. The notary was waiting at the coffee shop 3 blocks down. A woman in her 40s with pink glasses and a blunt bob. She didn't ask questions when Jeanette slid the documents across the table. "Witness or certify?" she asked. "Certify," Jeanette said, placing a steady hand on the signature line. She signed, no tremor in her hand. Back home, Jeanette stood at the base of the basement stairs and looked up at the low ceiling. Water stains had begun to spider across the plaster. A thin crack split one corner, traveling down toward the wall like a lazy vein. She snapped a photo with her phone, then 2 more, close-up, wide-angle, timestamp visible. From the laundry sink, she retrieved an old padded envelope. Inside, a stack of mail Darren had left sitting on the dryer for weeks. Past due notices, county tax reminders. She scanned each one into her phone and attached the photos of the ceiling. Subject line: Structural and health concerns. Rental area recipient: City of Maple Crossing, Housing and Inspection Division. No return name, just a digital signature. J. Grant, property co-owner. Later that evening, Jeanette sat cross-legged on the mattress, binder open. She leafed through the pages like she was reviewing a manuscript. Every number, every payment, proof of decades given freely and forgotten easily. She stopped on a scanned birthday card Darren had sent her 6 years ago. Inside, in rushed pen, "Hope Florida is fun. Thanks again for helping with the HVAC. You're the best." No return address. Just, "Love D." She slipped the card out of the sleeve and stared at it, then tucked it into the last page of the binder, facing backward. Upstairs, Rachel was on speakerphone. Her voice echoed through the ductwork. "If he can't refinance soon, we'll lose leverage. We need to know if she's even, legally coherent. She's old, she's emotional. Can we contest it?" Jeanette stood and walked to the vent. She didn't yell, she didn't knock. She just whispered, "I'm old. I'm emotional, and I'm legally airtight." Then she walked back to the folding table and opened her laptop. The message from Lorna was already waiting. "Need your approval to submit final documents. Buyer trust ready." Jeanette typed 2 words, "Submit all." She clicked send, and then she turned off the light, let the darkness settle around her like armor, and waited for the walls to speak again. Some warnings don't come as arguments, they come as clipboards. The knock came at 9:12 a.m. Sharp, official, 2 beats too firm to be a neighbor. Jeanette was already upstairs, folding a dish towel she hadn't been asked to wash. She glanced toward the front door, then stepped out of sight as Darren opened it, shirt wrinkled, eyes still red from sleep. A man in a gray county-issued windbreaker stood there, clipboard tucked under one arm. "Mr. Grant?" he asked. Yeah?" "Travis Wilcox, City of Maple Crossing Housing and Safety. Got a call about an unpermitted basement dwelling. We've got to do a safety assessment." Darren squinted. "A what?" Travis flipped a laminated badge toward him. "We've had anonymous reports of mold, exposed wiring, and residential misuse. Happens all the time. Should only take 20 minutes. Rachel appeared behind Darren, wrapped in a robe and panic. Is someone suing us?" Travis smiled politely. "Not at this time. Just a compliance check." Darren stepped aside like he'd just lost a bet. "Fine." Jeanette stood near the kitchen, quiet as glass. Travis paused when he spotted her. "You reside here, ma'am?" She gave him a small nod. "In the basement, temporarily." He noted something on his form. "Would you mind showing me the space?" She gestured toward the side entrance without a word. Downstairs, the air was colder than usual. The baseboard heater had gone out again, humming but giving nothing back. Travis pulled a flashlight from his pocket and scanned the walls. Visible mold at the ceiling line, no egress window. That's an automatic violation for a sleeping space. He ducked under a sagging support beam and pointed to a fuse box with an exposed panel. "Unsecured wiring," he murmured. "No insulation." Drip hazard from laundry unit. He crouched near the wall where Jeanette had taped the photo back up, matching the timestamp to the crack above. "And this? When did this appear?" Jeanette folded her hands. "A few months after I moved in. I thought it was just settling." Rachel's voice cut in from the top of the stairs. "It's not a real living space, just storage. My mother-in-law chose to sleep down there." Jeanette turned, calm. "I sleep where there's a bed." Travis scribbled faster. Darren's voice followed. "This is ridiculous. We're family. She's not a tenant." Travis looked up. "If someone lives in a space regularly and it's unsafe, they're a protected occupant, tenant or not. I'm going to need full access to upstairs utilities, plus a signature acknowledging receipt of this notice." He pulled a folded triplicate form from his clipboard and handed it to Darren. Jeanette stood just behind Travis, watching Darren's hands shake as he signed. An hour later, the front door closed behind the inspector. Darren dropped the form onto the dining table. Rachel stared at it like it might catch fire. "Where the hell did that come from?" she asked. "Who'd report us?" Darren didn't answer. He glanced at Jeanette instead, still standing by the sink, drying the same plate twice. She looked up. "I didn't realize it was unsafe. I never wanted to be a burden." Her voice was pure velvet, the kind that used to soothe fevers and cover bruised egos. Rachel opened her mouth, closed it again. Darren grabbed his coat. "I need to call the city. Fix this." He stormed out the back. Rachel turned to Jeanette. "You've been very quiet." Jeanette gave her a smile that barely curved. "It's my age. People don't like noise from women over 60. That evening, Jeanette sat back downstairs with her tea. She scrolled to the inspector's automated report, already sent via email, already archived, a dozen violations flagged in bold yellow, the kind that accumulate fines by the week. Upstairs, Rachel slammed a cabinet. Jeanette didn't flinch. She reached for her pen and added a line to her planner. City involved. Timeline accelerated. She capped the pen slowly, then whispered to herself, "They built a cage with my name on the lease, but I kept the keys." Some love letters don't use words. They wait behind brick and silence. Jeanette was wiping down the baseboard heater with a damp cloth when her finger caught on something sharp, just under the wall's edge, where the paint had peeled back long ago. She sat back on her heels, blinking. The drywall was solid, but just below it, a small brick section, likely from the original foundation, looked off. One of the bricks was slightly recessed, the mortar around it crumbly and uneven. She'd lived here long enough now to recognize which flaws were cosmetic and which were secrets. She retrieved a butter knife from the kitchenette drawer and knelt beside the wall. The brick wobbled. Behind it, a shallow cavity. Dust. A yellowed index card with faded ballpoint writing. And an envelope. She pulled it out slowly. Written in her late husband's handwriting. For Jeanette, if things ever go cold. Her hands trembled for the first time in weeks. She sat down hard on the edge of the cot and opened it. Inside, 8 neatly bundled stacks of bills held together with rubber bands that had dry rotted into brittle strands. Underneath, a smaller note. Rushed, hurried, full of shorthand. Used part for car down payment, left the rest. You always knew how to stretch $1. If you find this, it means you need it more than I did. She didn't cry. She inhaled once, slowly, then exhaled like a woman settling into purpose. 2 hours later, she was at Lorna's office again. "I want to move up the timeline," Jeanette said, placing the envelope on the desk like a formal document. "No delays. Buy out by next month." Lorna flipped the flap back and froze. "Where did you—" "My husband," Jeanette said simply. "Left me a vote of confidence." Lorna whistled. "You want to use it all?" Jeanette nodded. "Liquidate. Lock the deed. I'll sign whatever's next." Back at the house, Jeanette moved with quiet precision. She pulled down the box of seasonal decorations Darren had tossed beside the furnace weeks ago. Inside, she packed birth certificates, insurance papers, valuables from the binder, and 2 old Polaroids Darren had left behind when he moved out the first time. One of him at his high school graduation. One of him asleep on the couch with a toddler, Clara curled on his chest. She added neither guilt nor grief to the box, only documentation. She labeled it Grant-Storage, then tucked it near the laundry area, ready for quiet pickup. Upstairs, Darren was on the phone again, his voice tense, brittle. "I don't have that kind of liquidity," he snapped. "No, I can't get another co-signer. It's a family thing. Complicated." Jeanette ran her fingers along the edge of the shelf. Dust caught under her nails. She brushed it away. The basement walls had stopped whispering fear. Now they echoed with strategy. That night, she received a text from Lorna. "Offer submitted. Deed transfer packet ready for your signature. Buyer trust in place. Clock's ticking." Jeanette responded with a simple, "On it." She powered off the phone, then turned back to the now empty shelf. One last item remained, a black shoebox her husband had used for keepsakes. She hadn't opened it in years. Inside, a folded napkin from their honeymoon diner, a pressed daisy, and a 3x5 note card that read, "Jeanette equals the backbone. Don't forget your own weight." She placed it in the box labeled storage, then added a new sticky note to her planner. Assets rebalanced. Timeline, hours now. At 3:03 a.m., Rachel crept down to the basement, barefoot and unannounced. She didn't say hello, just stood in the doorway, eyes sweeping the half-packed space. "You planning to leave?" Jeanette didn't look up from her book. "No," she said. "I'm planning to be left alone." Rachel lingered, eyes narrowing. Jeanette smiled softly. "Don't worry, I'll let the paperwork speak next." Rachel turned and walked back upstairs without a word. "And Jeanette?" She turned the page. "Some dinners are served with silence and detonated with paper." The roast was overcooked. Rachel had burned the carrots again. Darren was swirling gravy like it held answers. Jeanette sat at the far end of the table, knife in hand but not cutting. Her plate was full. So was her patience. "Mom," Darren said, almost cheerful, "you barely touched your food." Jeanette blinked. "I'm not hungry for what's been served." A pause. Rachel looked away. Jeanette reached into her bag, pulled out a sealed envelope, and placed it gently beside Darren's wine glass. He stared at it like it was ticking. "What's this?" he asked. "Your buyout offer," she said calmly. "You have 10 days." The room froze. Darren let out a short, bitter laugh. "You're bluffing." "No," she said, pouring herself water. "I'm offering." He opened the envelope and scanned the document. Each page bled with precision. Lorna's firm name stamped at the top, full offer price listed below. Every number legally binding, every sentence airtight. "You can't be serious." He looked at her like she'd grown horns. "Where would you even get the money?" Jeanette sipped her water. "You should worry less about where it came from," she replied, "and more about what happens if you say no." Rachel leaned forward, voice low. "Is this revenge?" Jeanette smiled politely. "Number. This is paperwork, the grown-up version of boundaries." Darren shoved back his chair, stood too fast. The glass tipped, water pooling like panic. "You're trying to take my house." Jeanette stood too, smooth, quiet, unbothered. "Our house," she corrected, "and I'm simply choosing to own the part I built." He looked down at the document, then at her. "I don't have 10 days. What if I don't respond?" "You'll get one final notice," Jeanette said, "and then the court assumes you've forfeited." Rachel turned pale. "Wait, this is real? You're actually doing this?" Jeanette didn't answer. She picked up her napkin, dabbed the corner of her mouth, and laid it gently beside her untouched plate. Then she walked around the table, not a step rushed, and paused just behind Darren. "I offered help for 25 years, she said softly. "You treated it like background noise." He didn't move. Jeanette continued, voice lower. "This is the last offer I'll ever make." She walked out of the dining room, her chair still faintly rocking in her absence. Later that night, Darren sat alone at the table, the documents spread out in front of him. His thumb hovered over his phone. He'd tried to call 2 brokers, left 3 voicemails. The numbers didn't add up. Rachel stood in the doorway, arms crossed, mascara already smudged. "You said she'd never push back." "She never did before." Rachel pointed at the paper. "Well, she just did." With legal headers, Darren sank into the chair, rubbing his temples. "It's not over. I'll find a way. There's no way she pulled this off alone." From the basement, a soft hum rose, Jeanette's record player, old jazz crackling through the floorboards. Miles Davis. "So what?" Rachel's voice wobbled. "She's not scared of us." Darren looked up, eyes full of something he hadn't tasted in years. Doubt. Downstairs, Jeanette stood at her folding table, reviewing the confirmation email from Lorna's assistant. "Offer hand-delivered. 10-day countdown initiated. Let us know if further escalation is needed." Jeanette clicked archive. Then she reached for a black envelope from her planner and addressed it neatly. To Darren M. Grant. Subject, the cost of forgetting. She wouldn't mail it. Not yet. But it was ready. Everything was. And upstairs, her son was finally learning what it felt like to dine with consequences. Sometimes the quietest victories are notarized in triplicate. The deadline passed at 4 p.m. on a Thursday. By 4:03, the server at Lorna's office had time-stamped the lapse. No counteroffer, no extension request, no response at all. By 4:06, Jeanette received the subject line she had waited weeks to see. Buyer proceeding, title transfer underway. She read it once, then again, then closed her laptop without ceremony. Upstairs, the hallway was loud with Darren's pacing. His voice was a chain of curses looped into phone calls, one bleeding into the next. Rachel had stopped arguing sometime around lunch. Now she was in the sunroom with a throw blanket and a 1,000-yard stare, scrolling Zillow listings like they were obituaries. Jeanette stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her gray wool coat. The sensible one. The strong one. She checked her watch. 4:45. She stepped outside into the chilled air, crossed the driveway, and slid into Lorna's car without a word. The ride to the courthouse was short. The filing office smelled like toner and tired hopes. Jeanette didn't flinch. The clerk, barely 30, nails bitten down, glanced over the paperwork, cross-checked signatures, then tapped on her keyboard. "Okay, that's it," she said. "The updated deed will post within the hour. It'll also reflect on your homeowner portal by morning. You'll get the hard copy within 5 business days." Jeanette blinked once. "So it's done." The clerk smiled politely. "Yes, ma'am, you're the sole owner now." Jeanette reached for the document. Her name was printed in bold at the top. Jeanette M. Grant, sole owner. No footnote, no co-signer, no split title. Just her. A quiet exhale left her lips, like letting go of air she didn't know she'd held for 30 years. By the time she returned home, the mail had arrived. On top of the usual flyers and bills sat a thick, white envelope. From the county recorder's office. She held it like a trophy and walked through the front door. Darren was waiting in the foyer, eyes bloodshot, fingers twitching. "Tell me you didn't." Jeanette handed him the envelope. He tore it open, skimmed it, and dropped the pages like they burned. "You can't do this. This was our house." "No," Jeanette corrected. "It was my house, and then I shared it. Now I've reclaimed it." "You blindsided me." She folded her coat over her arm. "You had 10 days." Rachel emerged from the hallway, her voice too light. "Maybe we can work something out. We can pay rent until we figure—" Jeanette cut her off with a look that stopped mid-sentence. "I'll be fair," Jeanette said. "You'll have the weekend to decide. Sign the lease as tenants or make other arrangements. But the title won't change again." Darren scoffed. "You think you're better than us now?" Jeanette tilted her head, almost amused. "No, Darren. I've just remembered who I was before I tried to be useful to you." He stepped back like she'd slapped him. Jeanette turned, walked calmly down the hallway, and disappeared into the kitchen. Only once the door swung closed behind her did she let her fingers tremble against the counter. She reached into the drawer, pulled out the black envelope she'd written days earlier. To Darren M. Grant. Subject, the cost of forgetting. She placed it in the center of the dining table. Let them open it when she wasn't in the room. Let them read her words when she was upstairs, unpacking her victory. That night, Jeanette stood in the front yard under the porch light, watching as the house glowed warm behind her. Her name echoed across the deed, the emails, the new mailbox label. Tomorrow, the locks would change. Tonight, she would sleep as a homeowner. A woman with no co-signers, and the house, hers. Finally, fully, deliberately, hers. The kitchen smelled like fresh coffee and fresh consequence. Jeanette stood at the head of the dining table, a clipboard in her hand, rental agreements neatly clipped beneath. The smell of lemon oil still lingered. She'd wiped down the table herself that morning, not out of nostalgia, out of principle. Darren slouched in one chair, arms folded, jaw set. Rachel sat beside him, eyes already rimmed red. "I've outlined 3 options," Jeanette began, her voice calm and resolute. "Option 1, you both move out by Friday. Option 2, you rent each room individually under separate leases. Option 3, discuss with an attorney but understand the property's fully under my name now." She slid the clipboard across the table. Darren stared at it like it was radioactive. "You're charging us rent?" Jeanette nodded. "I'm charging tenants rent. That's how ownership works." Rachel reached for Darren's arm. "This is a joke, right? You're just mad. We can fix this." Jeanette didn't sit. "No joke. Rent is due the 1st of the month. You'll find the amounts broken down by room. Kitchen privileges are shared, garage access and attic storage are off limits. No pets, no late guests." Rachel's voice cracked. "But we're family." Jeanette raised one eyebrow. "You said I was just a guilt mattress. I'm running a business now." Darren stood abruptly. "You're punishing us." "I'm preserving myself," she replied. "Big difference." He paced to the window, fists clenched. "I paid into this house." "No," Jeanette cut in. "You paid around it. I paid into it. And I have the receipts to prove it. Everyone." Rachel's tears spilled now, hot and clumsy. "You don't need this money." Jeanette tilted her head. Tears don't pay utilities, Rachel. Rachel pushed her chair back, shaky. Where are we supposed to go? Jeanette picked up a folder labeled Maple Crossing Rentals. She placed it next to the clipboard. These are available units within 10 miles, but I'd suggest moving fast. The market's competitive. Darren shot her a glare so sharp it could have shattered glass. You won't get away with this. Jeanette leaned forward slightly. Son, I've already gotten away with it. Now I'm just enforcing the lease. For a long, brittle moment, no one moved. The refrigerator clicked softly in the background. The house, hers now, seemed to hold its breath. Rachel finally whispered, "And if we don't sign?" Jeanette pulled a stamped envelope from her sweater pocket. "Then you'll receive this by certified mail. It's the formal 30-day notice for eviction proceedings." Rachel choked on a gasp. Jeanette remained steady. "You treated me like a shadow. Now I'm casting one." She turned and walked toward the stairs, the lease agreements untouched on the table. That night, Jeanette sat in the upstairs master bedroom, the one that used to belong to Darren and Rachel. She hadn't moved in yet, but she'd left the door open, the lamp on, and the bed made. Claiming space wasn't about drama, it was about presence. Downstairs, she could hear Darren on the phone, again. Phrases like, "Can we sue?" and "She's weaponizing her own house," floated through the vents. Jeanette didn't listen closely. She was filling out her ledger. Expenses, dates, incoming rent, future repairs. The numbers added up like applause. A knock came at the door frame. Rachel, no makeup, hair tangled from tossing. "Jeanette," she said softly, "this isn't you." Jeanette didn't look up. Number. "This is the part of me you've never met. The part that doesn't beg." Rachel crossed her arms. "I thought you'd forgive us." Jeanette capped her pen. "I did forgive you," she said, "but I didn't forget the balance." Rachel lingered for a beat, then left. Jeanette opened the top drawer of the nightstand. Inside was a copy of the deed and the notarized rental agreement. She slid both into a folder labeled Active Contracts, and then, smiling faintly, added a new sticky note to her planner. Upstairs claimed. Rent clock starts Monday. Some walls don't keep you in. They spell you out. The hallway corkboard appeared overnight. Pinned in clean rows, laminated house rules, printed in 12-point serif font, double-spaced like scripture. Rachel found it first, returning from the laundry room with damp towels slung over her arm. She stopped short at the sight, staring at the notice like it might demand a signature. House rules. Effective immediately. No guests after 9 p.m. Kitchen use limited to 1 hour per tenant per day. Fridge space assigned by cubic inch. See shelf markers. Wi-Fi is not included. Personal hotspots only. Garage and attic access revoked. Locks changed. Noise curfew begins at 8:30 p.m. Rent unpaid by the 3rd equals $45 late fee. No exceptions. Requests must be submitted in writing. This home is owner-occupied. Respect accordingly. J.M. Grant, owner Rachel read it twice, then called for Darren. He came stomping from the den, still barefoot, shirt inside out. "Is this real?" she asked, pointing. Darren scanned the list, his lips pulling tight. "This has to be illegal," he muttered, grabbing his phone. Down the hall, Jeanette was recaulking the base of the hall closet, kneeling in soft silence. She didn't look up when Darren stormed over. "You changed the garage lock?" "I did," she said, "and the attic. Keys are not included in the lease terms." Rachel sputtered, "Our winter clothes are in there." Jeanette stood slowly. "Then I suggest planning ahead next year." Darren shoved his phone toward her. "You can't just create rules. This isn't a rental," she finished. "It is now. And these rules follow Maple Crossing's landlord-tenant ordinances. Would you like a printed copy?" "I want a lawyer," he snapped. Jeanette tilted her head. "Do you want a lawyer, or can you afford one?" He froze. She walked past him, voice as even as paint drying. "Because if you'd like to dispute the lease, I'll gladly forward you to my legal contact. I'm sure she'd love a tenant case this mild." Rachel stood like she was watching the rules reshape gravity. Jeanette reached the kitchen, opened the fridge, and pointed to the shelf labeled J.M. Grant, Owner use only. Do not move my food, she said, and I won't comment on yours. She pulled out half a grapefruit, plated it, and walked away. That evening, Darren found the mail key missing from its hook. In its place, a note reading, "Mail is collected by property owner. Tenants will receive personal letters unopened. All junk and promotions will be recycled accordingly." Rachel curled up on the love seat, knees to her chest. She's turned this house into a spreadsheet. Darren sank beside her, defeated. She's weaponizing order, Rachel blinked, and doing it legally. Downstairs, Jeanette opened her laptop and logged today's updates. Locks changed. Attic plus garage rule set posted, corkboard plus emailed, rent notices issued, lease addendums printed, mail protocol documented. She reached for her glass of water, added a note to the planner. They still believe they're being punished. They don't realize this is mercy. She closed the laptop, then opened a drawer containing 2 certified copies of the lease, one for each tenant. She slipped them into manila folders marked with their names, tucked beneath a 3rd folder labeled Vacancy Contingency Plan, because mercy had an expiration date, and Jeanette wasn't afraid to enforce it. The next morning, Darren stood in the driveway watching a locksmith reinstall a cylinder on the side shed. Jeanette stood nearby in a coat and gloves, sipping coffee from a ceramic mug. It read, "I know my rights. Do you? You really think you can freeze us out of our own home?" he asked. Jeanette didn't flinch. "I already did. Now I'm just adjusting the thermostat." The locksmith handed her a new key. She slipped it into her pocket and offered Darren nothing. He tried one more time. "You'd rather live with resentment than share?" Jeanette walked past him without stopping. "I tried sharing," she said. "Then I learned the fine print matters. Sometimes the most powerful move is changing your address by 1 floor. The moving truck arrived at 10:02 a.m., not to drop off, but to rearrange. 2 polite college boys in gray polo shirts carried labeled boxes up the stairs, past Darren's glaring silence and Rachel's pinched expression. Jeanette oversaw from the landing, clipboard in hand, sipping from her now familiar mug, "I know my rights. Do you?" "Master bedroom, far wall, then dresser near the window," she instructed. They nodded, efficient, respectful. Rachel stood at the foot of the stairs, voice rising with each syllable. "You're taking our bedroom?" Jeanette didn't break stride. "I'm reclaiming square footage. The lease didn't guarantee you that room." "We have lived here for years," Rachel snapped, "and I've paid for it for decades," Jeanette replied, stepping into her new space. Sunlight streamed through the large window, hitting the quilt she'd had in storage since her husband's passing. The room smelled faintly of lemon polish and beginnings. Darren appeared behind Rachel, voice low. "So what, we're supposed to just sleep in the guest room now?" Jeanette lifted a pillow, fluffed it once, and set it on the bed. "The guest room has a door. The couch does not. Choose accordingly." Downstairs, the front door opened again. A soft knock on the frame. A young woman stepped in, dark jeans, hoodie, a backpack slung over one shoulder. She extended a hand. "Hi, I'm Talia. You must be Ms. Grant?" Jeanette smiled and shook her hand. "Welcome, Talia. I have the key ready for you. Come on in." Rachel's face twisted. "Who the hell is that?" Jeanette turned toward her tenants, calm as tea steam. "That's my new basement renter. Grad student, pre-law, needed quiet, clean space. She signed a 6-month lease this morning." "You're putting a stranger down there?" Rachel hissed. "Where your family was?" Jeanette didn't blink. "Yes, because strangers tend to follow rules better." Talia looked between them, sensing tension, but stayed quiet. Jeanette handed her a welcome packet, Wi-Fi details, laundry instructions, and a labeled parking pass. Upstairs, Rachel's voice cracked. "You're replacing us." Jeanette stepped past her, smoothing the corner of the bedspread. "Number, I'm replacing bad roommates. There's a difference." Darren exhaled sharply and turned toward the living room. By nightfall, he was stretched across the couch with a throw blanket that didn't quite reach his feet. Rachel hovered in the guest room, pacing like a tenant facing a landlord inspection. That evening, Jeanette baked cornbread in the upstairs oven for the first time in months. The smell wafted down the hallway, settling like confidence into every corner. Talia popped her head up from the basement stairs, book in hand. "It smells amazing," Jeanette beamed. "Come up if you want a slice. No curfew on cornbread." Rachel appeared just as Talia took a plate. "You're giving her fresh food?" she whispered, horrified. "She pays on time," Jeanette said, "and she asked politely." Talia glanced awkwardly between them. "I can go—" "No, honey," Jeanette said gently. "You stay. You belong here." Rachel stormed off. Jeanette turned back to the kitchen, plating herself a slice, the corners golden and perfect. Later that night, she updated her ledger. Master bedroom occupied, basement tenant onboarded, rent received, T. Alvarez, $750 per month, lease violations, 0. Then she added one final line, basement chapter closed, new floor, new terms. Just before bed, Jeanette returned to the corkboard in the hallway. She pinned one last laminated notice at the bottom. Rooms are not rights, they are rented. Management. And downstairs the couch creaked under Darren's shifting weight. But Jeanette? She slept in her own bed, in her own room, above the floor where she'd once been buried alive in silence. Tomorrow she'd repaint the guest bath. Tonight she was the one with the view. Some warnings come in handwriting, others come with timestamps. The espresso machine hissed like a slow leak of patience. Jeanette stood in the kitchen in her navy robe, brewing a single shot into a ceramic demitasse. On the counter beside her, a pale yellow envelope waited, corner aligned perfectly with the tile grout. Rachel padded in wearing mismatched pajamas, mascara still smudged from whatever she thought passed for a late-night crisis. "Morning," she said, voice brittle. Jeanette nodded. "There's coffee. And an envelope." Rachel picked it up with suspicion, as if it might explode. Inside, a printed late payment notice, formal tone and all. Tenant Rachel Grant. Failure to remit rent by the 3rd. Late fee applied, $45. Grace period ends Friday. Second failure constitutes breach of lease terms. Jeanette sipped her espresso without blinking. Consider this a reminder, not a punishment. Rachel's jaw clenched. "You're seriously doing this?" "You were 2 days late," Jeanette replied. "The lease was clear." Darren shuffled in behind her, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Come on, Mom. You're not really gonna evict your own daughter-in-law over a technicality." Jeanette placed her empty cup in the sink. "I'm not evicting anyone. I'm enforcing standards." Rachel scoffed. "Well, good luck finding another tenant who doesn't care about how this place feels like a prison." From the basement stairs, a soft voice chimed in. "Actually, it's been the quietest place I've lived in months." Talia stepped into view, holding a textbook and a thermos. She offered Jeanette a warm smile. "Thanks again for installing the light dimmer. It's perfect for late reading." Jeanette returned the smile. "Glad it works." Rachel's mouth opened, then shut. That afternoon, Jeanette documented the warning notice in her binder, scanned a copy into the digital tenant portal she'd started using, and emailed both versions to Rachel's account. She attached a read receipt. No more assumptions. That evening the house was quiet, until it wasn't. Talia was coming up for dinner when it happened. Rachel exploded in the hallway, voice pitched high with resentment. "You think you belong here? You're just a placeholder. This was my house. I folded laundry in this hallway before you were even out of high school." Talia froze, holding a Tupperware of pasta. "I was just getting my mail." Darren appeared behind Rachel but didn't intervene. Jeanette came down the hall, calm as always, phone already in hand. The recording light blinked red. "Stop yelling at my tenant," she said, voice like cold metal. "That's your second lease violation." Rachel turned, stunned. "You were recording me?" "I'm documenting," Jeanette replied. "You created a hostile living environment. Per Lease Clause 4C and Maple Crossing Municipal Code Section 18.7, you're now eligible for a formal removal notice." Rachel's breath caught in her throat. Talia quietly slipped into the kitchen. Darren finally stepped forward. "Mom, stop. This is insane. You're acting like a landlord instead of—" "Instead of what?" Jeanette asked. Instead of a woman who spent years being ignored in her own home? A woman who co-signed everything but got asked to sleep in the basement? He hesitated. Jeanette held up the phone. You wanted me to stay quiet, but you never set a volume limit on action. Later that night, the notice was slid under Rachel's door. Second strike, breach of lease, formal removal in process, legal response window, 72 hours. Jeanette logged it, filed the recording, noted the interaction in her calendar with a single word, strike. She sat at the kitchen table afterward, writing checks, utilities, taxes, repair quotes. Talia passed by and paused. That was intense. Jeanette glanced up, thoughtful. There's nothing scarier than a woman with receipts and nothing left to lose. Talia smiled faintly. Remind me never to miss rent. Jeanette raised her coffee mug. You won't. You've got discipline. Downstairs, Rachel sobbed into a pillow. Jeanette added one more sticky note to her planner. Tenant pending removal. Grace is not renewable. Tomorrow the paperwork would be filed. Tonight the espresso was just strong enough. Some legacies aren't inherited. They're rebuilt. The sound of packing tape echoed like applause through the foyer. Darren stood by the staircase stuffing the last of his clothes into a duffel bag that sagged like his posture. His face was drawn, beard overgrown, eyes ringed in red. Rage no longer crackled, just resignation. Rachel's suitcase was already in the back seat of the borrowed Honda. She hadn't spoken more than 10 words since the second notice. She hadn't apologized either. Jeanette stood by the doorway, arms folded, watching without gloating. This is what you wanted? Darren muttered. Your own son, evicted? Jeanette raised an eyebrow. I didn't evict you. I offered terms. You refused. Darren snorted. You think this makes you powerful? No, she said. It makes me free. He opened his mouth, closed it, picked up the duffel. At the door, he paused, half defiance, half hope. I'll be back. Jeanette smiled faintly. Only if you schedule a showing. He blinked. She held up a glossy brochure. Maple Crossing Properties, fully renovated rentals by appointment only. Then she closed the door behind him. The house exhaled. 2 weeks later, Jeanette knelt by the front steps in denim and gloves, planting a row of red knockout roses along the walkway. The mulch was fresh, the porch trim newly painted in soft sage. The banister had been sanded and resealed. She'd done it herself over 3 sunny afternoons with a podcast and a cold iced tea. Inside, the guest room had become her reading lounge. The master closet now had polished cedar shelves. The corkboard of rules had been replaced with framed prints, a lighthouse, a bridge, and one that simply read, Boundaries are how we teach people to love us. Talia passed by on her way to class, backpack bouncing. The garden looks amazing, Jeanette smiled. It's blooming for the first time in years. Talia nodded toward the porch. That the new paint? Sagewood gray, Jeanette said. They called it calm and capable. I took it personally. Talia grinned. You're a legend around campus, by the way. The grandma landlord who owns her ex-kid's house. They think you're a myth. Jeanette shrugged. Let them think that. Keeps the rent checks prompt. Later that evening, Jeanette sat at the kitchen table with a hot cup of chamomile and one final envelope. Inside, the spare keys, mailbox fob, emergency codes, and a hand-labeled folder marked Property Turnover Instructions. She sealed it carefully, addressed it to K. Soto, Maple Crossing Property Management. Attached a note. Monthly walkthroughs required. Rent increases allowed annually per ordinance. Keep it tight. She walked it to the mailbox herself, slid it in, raised the red flag. Back inside, she opened her laptop and clicked Confirm on her cruise reservation. 11 days, departing Miami, balcony cabin with early boarding. Under Reason for Travel, she typed Celebration and Silence. Then she opened her planner, nearly full now, every page marked with notes, strategies, and a trail of tiny triumphs. On the final page, she wrote, Victory is the quiet you earn after the storm. Just before bed, she lit a vanilla candle and placed it on the mantel. Above it, the deed hung in a wood frame, centered, unshared, Jeanette M. Grant, sole owner. She turned off the lights, left the house still, clean and secure, and as the screen door clicked shut behind her, the last sound it carried was the soft echo of a woman who had once been dismissed as a burden, now walking into the night as a homeowner, a businesswoman, and a legend carved in legal stone. Tomorrow, the cruise. Tonight, peace. No basement, no permission, just breath and space and every square foot of her worth.